Let's talk about fractions raised to exponents. So let me write out a few. 1/2 to the 1, of course, is just 1/2. 1/2 squared, you will apply the exponent to the numerator and the denominator. So it's what? It's 1 squared, which is 1, over 2 squared, it's 1/4. 1/2 cubed, you will apply the exponent to the numerator. So 1 cubed is 1, and the denominator, 2 cubed, is 8. One thing you'll notice is that when you take a fraction and raise it to an exponent, the number is getting smaller, not bigger. 1/2 is bigger than 1/4, is bigger than 1/8. How about 1/2 to the negative 1? So that is 1 over 1/2 to the positive 1. It's 1 over 1/2. Well, dividing by a fraction, remember that? That's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the fraction, the flipped over version of the fraction. So that is 1 times, not 1 over 2, but 2 over 1. That is 2. So 1/2 to the negative 1 is 2. So when you have a fraction raised to a negative exponent, the number actually gets bigger, not smaller. 1/2 to the negative 2, same as 1 over 1/2 to the positive 2. It's the same as 1 over 1/4. That is the same as 4. So I'm taking a fraction, raising it to a negative exponent. It's actually becoming a bigger number, not a smaller number. And 1/2 to the negative 2 is the reciprocal of 1/2 to the positive 2. Same story if I raise 1/10 to an exponent. 1/10 to the 1 is just 1/10. 1/10 squared is 1 over 10 squared. 1 over 10 squared, which of course is 1 over 100. 1/10 raised to the power of 3. 1/10 cubed is 1 over 10 cubed. It's 1 over 1,000. 1/10 to the 0, anything to the 0 is just 1. But then 1 over 10 to the negative 1, you flip it over. So the rule is, if you raise a fraction to a negative exponent, instead of 1 over 10, I'm going to have 10. And instead of negative 1, I'm going to have 1. 1/10 to the negative 2. 1 over 1/10 to the positive 2. That is 10 squared. And here you see 1/10 to the negative 2 is the reciprocal of 1/10 to the positive 2. One point I want to make, I said earlier, 1/2 squared is 1/4. It gets smaller, not bigger. If you take a fraction and raise it to a positive exponent, the number gets smaller, not bigger. If I were to write the number line, so here is 0, here is 1. Suppose I write 1/2 in here. 1/2 squared is 1/4. It's smaller, not bigger. So 1/2 squared. If you take a fraction and raise it to a positive exponent, the number gets smaller, not bigger. So let's write this out in general terms. My examples were 1/2 and 1/10, but suppose I wrote x over y. We know x over y to the 0 is 1. Here we just have x over y. X over y squared is x squared over y squared. All right, simple enough. But x over y to the negative 1, what do? That's y over x to the positive 1. It's just y over x. And x over y to the negative 2, you flip it over, it becomes y over x to not the negative 2, but the positive 2. So a really good thing to remember, if you see a fraction raised to a negative exponent, you flip the fraction over, you just write the reciprocal, and you negate the exponent. So the negative 2 in this case would become a positive 2. If I had 2/3 to the negative 2, that's the same as 3/2, 3 over 2, to the positive 2. So the rule, you flip the fraction and you switch the sign of the exponent.